The Assyrians were what we would call the ultimate terrorists. These people ruled the most hideous tyranny and violence from the Caucasus Mountains, which is southern Russia, to the Caspian Sea, to the Persian Gulf, beyond the Tigris, into Asia Minor and Egypt. The Assyrian kings literally tormented the world. They flung bodies of soldiers like so much clay. They made pyramids of human heads. They sacrificed myriads of sons and daughters of their enemies. They burned the cities. They filled the populous lands with death and devastation. They were basically like locusts. The Assyrians were terrorists that came in, stole everything, made the people slaves, took all of the stuff that was good, and took it back to Nineveh. And so they just filled everybody with fear. So what does God say you need when you're afraid? God reminds Israel of his word. God has future plans for Israel. He's telling that to them right here in this passage. 20% of the Old Testament prophets' writings are prophetic. God made an unbreakable promise. God said, I'm going to give you a land. Jesus said, I'm going to rule there, he tells us in the New Testament. All my promises will come to pass. See, that's who the Messiah is. The Messiah is the person who fulfills all God's promises. And God says, I have a future for you. And Ahaz said, I don't believe it. And God is watching over his word to fulfill it. Now, specifically, look what's in chapter 12. Starting in chapter 11, going to 12. A branch will grow out of his root. This is Christ. Christ, remember we saw 2 days ago, was the branch in our lessons last week. The Spirit of the Lord will rest upon him. The Spirit of wisdom and knowledge and counsel and might. Now look at this, 6th verse. The wolf also shall dwell with the lamb, the leopard shall lie down with the young goat, the calf and the young lion and the fatling together, and a child shall lead them. Did you know that verse is at the United Nations building in New York? Unbelievable that an organization would have a verse from the Bible, but they talk about what the Bible talks about, the future rule of Messiah, they have as the goal for the United Nations, that there's going to be this time of peace. Verse 9 says, they will not hurt or destroy in all my holy mountain. The earth shall be full of the knowledge of the Lord. When is that talking about? It's the future. Do you remember that chart of Isaiah was standing here and he was looking? And Isaiah is seeing verse 9 and 10 and all that. And he's seeing verse 11, or the end of verse 10 is all future. But then verse 11 goes back to the present. It shall come to pass in that day that the Lord will set his hand a second time and recover the nation of Israel. So all the way through Isaiah, there's this going back and forth between Ahaz in the moment of facing off and then looking into the future when Christ comes as the Messiah, not to suffer on the cross, but to be the King of the world. So that's the challenge of studying Isaiah. When we get to chapter 12, I love this. This was the verse, by the way, when I went to Bible college. This, Isaiah 12:3, was over the drinking fountain. Every time, in fact, Bonnie, you remember it up in the alumni building. Every time we came to the one drinking fountain where hundreds of us were going to classes, we would push the button for the water to come out, and we would look up and it would say, therefore with joy you will draw water from the wells of salvation. Verse 2, God is my salvation, Ahaz. I will trust and not be afraid, Ahaz said I won't. Yah, the Lord is my strength and song. He has become my salvation. See, the promises of Isaiah were in direct challenge to the moment of Ahaz's fear of the terrorists.